Hi everyone, we're back again to find out what happens next with Gilly. Oh, and I do have a confession. I am having a really troublesome time with all the Latin here. The Latin for all the insects and animals' names. I'm trying to look up how to pronounce them, and different sites seem to give me different interpretations. So I'm gonna go with what sounds best to me. But if anybody out there, if you have some info on how these insect names or animal names actually should be pronounced, please do let me know. I would love to know that. The neither YouTube videos nor any of the sites that I looked at have given me a definite answer. Okay, so with that, let's start with chapter 3. Again, it begins with a pen and ink drawing. It's a rooftop. There are it shows a section of a rooftop with a brick chimney on it, and there's a whole host of pigeons again, flying around it. Some are just about to land on the roof, some are just flying away or flying around it. There are a few trees in the background, and the roof itself seems to be a little worse for wear. I forget what these things are called on top of roofs. Is it shingles? Maybe, I think it's shingles. So they seem a little rickety, old, and they seem to also have moss growing on them. So, yes, all in all, I guess the impression is it's a chimney that's used, and it's a rooftop that is familiar to these pigeons. And it's a little worse for wear, maybe. That's how I would describe it. And with that, let's begin. Life could not be anything but better at the new school. I was still too clever for comfort, and not clever enough to hide it. But I had learned to freewheel a little, and to be content with second or third place in class. I was fairly good at games too, and my talent for drawing, an acceptable one, was admired. So though I remember little in the way of positive happiness, the years went by smoothly enough. The school itself was beautiful. A big 18th century house surrounded by park and woodland, where we were allowed to wander at will in our free time. This only in theory. In practice, we got little free time. But I believe I was, in fact, the only one who really coveted the privilege. Accustomed to solitude all my young life, I now craved it. And whenever I could escape my schoolmates, I found my way into the woods, where stood an abandoned summer house, which I thought of as my own. It was dilapidated and dirty, and on damp days, the rain dripped through the roof. But nearby was the lime walk, smelling of honey, and if one sat still enough in the shelter of the summer house, the red squirrels would come right in through the doorway, and the birds fly to their nests under the eaves. And there, once again, it happened. The one memorable encounter of those green and growing years. It was half-term in the summer of my 14th year. Almost everyone had gone out with parents, so I was free for the day. My parents, of course, never came. I sat alone in the summer house drawing. I had found globe flowers and herb Paris and lesser twayblade and these were in a jar on the rickety wooden table in front of me. A footstep sounded on the mousy path outside. Cousin Gilly said cheerfully, "I thought I might find you here. Have you had tea?" "Oh, Cousin Gillis. No, I haven't." "Then come along. We'll go down to the river. I've brought a picnic with me. Leave those flowers. You can get them when we come back." I don't remember that I ever asked her how she had come or how she had found me. I suppose I still took her kind of magic for granted. She even knew without telling that we were not allowed to go to the river in the normal way. Nobody saw us. We crossed the hockey pitches and walked along the banks of the river under the oak trees. Beyond their shadow was a long, sunny curve of water meadow, where once a bank or causeway had been built to keep the river back in flood time. We sat there, while below us, as if it were a matter of course, a kingfisher flashed down from a dead branch, caught a fish, and vanished with it into his hole in the sandy bank. "Do you remember the ladybird?" asked Cousin Gillis. "And Mrs. Tiggywinkle?" "Coccinella," I said demurely. "And Erinaceus europaeus. Of course I do." She laughed. "Poor child. But you were a quick study. And I gather you've been a quick study ever since. Those drawings you were doing were quite beautiful. How old are you now?" "Nearly 14. I do school certificate next year." "And then? What are you planning to do with yourself, Gilly?" Gilly here. I should say here that when I reached my teens, I discarded the childish spelling of Jilly, though my name was pronounced in the same way. "Do you know yet?" asked my cousin. "Not really. University, Mummy says, and then teach, but I'm not sure that I want to. What I'd really like is to be an artist." I believe that for me at that age, being an artist meant a kind of picturesque independence in a well-lighted garret with a dash of Paris and Burlington House thrown in. Most importantly, it meant having my own place, garret or otherwise, and being alone when I wanted to. I longed to go to an art school, but there was no way my parents could have afforded it. And since Cousin Gillis was already paying for most of my schooling, I could hardly tell her so. Nor even if she had paid for me, or, as my teacher seemed to think was possible, I had secured a scholarship, would my mother have let me go. She had made that clear. So I knew I would have to go with the tide, earn a university place, teach if I had to, perhaps someday meet someone. "If that's what you really want to do, then what's to stop you?" asked Cousin Gillis briskly. "You have the talent. No need to be modest. You must know it." "Well, yes, but you see—" I bit my lip and stopped. She read my thoughts unerringly. "And don't give me any nonsense about not having the chance or the luck. Let me tell you something. The only luck you have in this life is the talent you're born with. The rest is up to you." "Yes, Cousin Gillis." Her eyes twinkled. "All right. End of sermon. Have a sandwich. And let's talk of something else, shall we?" "Yes, please." I accepted both offers with relief. The sandwich was a new roll, bulging with scrambled eggs and cress, a wonderful change from school meals. "Tell me about the places you've been to. Have you really been right round the world?" So while we ate the picnic she had brought, she told me about the places she had seen, so vividly that now, when I remember that day, I can see some of those exotic landscapes as clearly as the riverbank, with the Eden flowing below us and the kingfisher flashing to and from his bow. The chime of the church clock striking 5 floated across the hockey pitches. Soon it would be time to go. We gathered up the picnic debris and stuffed it back into Cousin Gillis's hold-all. Interlude over, back to school, back in fact to Earth. It's a bit like that other time, isn't it? I said. You're just coming out of nowhere and a lovely afternoon, and then ordinary things again. Like a fairy godmother. Once when I was little at the convent, I pretended you were a fairy godmother, and as a matter of fact, I still think you are. It's such a nice thing to have. And you did say one thing that I've always remembered, when the dragonfly climbed out of the pond and flew away. Do you remember that? I do indeed. What about it? I asked if you were a witch, and you said you could sometimes make things happen. What did you mean? Was it true? She was silent. Then she reached into the hold-all and brought out something about the size of a tennis ball, wrapped in black velvet. Holding it in her palm, she unwrapped it, letting the velvet fall away until the object lay exposed, a ball, certainly, but not a tennis ball, or indeed like any ball I had ever seen. It looked like glass, but not ordinary glass, and I knew straight away what it was. A crystal ball. A small reflecting world of misty green and gold, where the breeze in the boughs threw shadow and shine, and the sun on the water made sparks that dazzled the eyes. My cousin was speaking. Whether I can make things happen or not, I do not know. But I do sometimes see what is going to happen, and then whatever one does appears as its cause. She smiled faintly. A prerequisite for prophetic power? I did not understand her. I ploughed on. You mean you see things in that crystal? In that and in other ways. Then it's true it can be done. Oh yes, it's true. I stared fascinated at the globe in her hand. Cousin Gillis, could you look now and see what's going to happen? A direct look, grave and gentle. You mean to you, don't you? That's what everyone means when they talk of the future. It's a very narrow channel, the future. I'm sorry, it was only... You did ask me what I was going to do when I grow up, and I wasn't sure. Don't be sorry, she smiled suddenly. We're all alike. I've peered down my own channel already. Have you? I suppose I was naively surprised that anyone so advanced in years should have any future worth longing for. Life for anyone of Cousin Gillis's age was all in the past. She had read me with ease. She was laughing. Well, wouldn't you want to know when it was all going to end for you? No. You can't choose, you know. When you look, you may see what's near at hand, or you may see right to the very end. Would you want to do that? I don't really know. Would you? I have done. That's enough of mine. Would you like to look for yours? The globe in her hand was flickering with light and dark from the flow of the river. I hesitated. How? Just look, do you mean? That's all. Don't be scared. You'll probably see nothing except what's there of the world right round us now. Here, take it. She put the crystal still lying in its velvet into my cupped palms. Now, empty your mind as best as you can, and look, without hope, without fear, without memory, and without guile. Just look. I looked. My own face small and distorted, the running light of the river, a flash of blue, the kingfisher, a shoal of black streaks, like tadpoles, but I knew from the screaming in the sky that they were swifts skimming the treetops. Another shoal, white, sailing, tilting, silent as a snowstorm, a flight of doves, or pigeons, wheeling and dipping like a cloud of snow in an old-fashioned paperweight. Then crystal grey as mist, reflecting my eyes and the crimson of my school blazer and the tiny trees behind me. I looked up, blinking. The sky was empty. "Well?" she asked. "Nothing. Only what you said. The world that's here. The trees and the river and the swifts and that flock of pigeons." I looked about me. "Where did they go? Where are they?" "In the crystal." I sat up straight and pushed the hair back from my forehead. "Are you saying they weren't real?" "But they were. Look, there they are again," as the swifts tore past above us, shrilling like bosun's whistles. "Oh, they're real enough." "But not the pigeons," said Cousin Galis, reaching to take the crystal from me. "Do you honestly mean there wasn't a flock of them flying over, white ones and grey, quite low?" "That's what I mean." Then I drew a breath. I did see something. It seemed so. I took another longer breath and let it go on a sigh. "But why? What does it mean?" She was wrapping the crystal and tucking it carefully away into the holdall. She took her time over the answer. "Only that you have just told me what I wanted to know, that you are your mother's daughter, and for want of a better term, my godchild." And that, in spite of my eager questions, was all that she would say. I gave up at length and went back to something she had said earlier. "You said you had looked at your own future. Did you see it?" I didn't need to see that in the crystal. We were walking back now, skirting the edge of the hockey field. She paused and looked up, but I got the impression that she was looking clear through the branches of the trees to something way beyond and shining. A little more travelling here and there, and learning a little more, I hope. "Did you know I was a herbalist? I collect when I travel, and there's always something new to learn in the out-of-the-way places." Then home. She looked down at me. "I have a home now. I saw the house and it seemed made for me. So I took it on. Someday you will see it. Not you must, but you will." "What's it like?" I asked. "A good house, deep in the woods, with a garden all around it and a river flowing past it. Fruit trees and flowers planted for the bees, a place to grow my herbs. Silence in winter, and in summer, nothing but the birds. Lonely as the grave, and every bit as restful." To me at that age, rest was not something I wanted, and the grave was so far off as to be unimaginable. But there was one essential for any worldly heaven. I asked eagerly, "Will you keep animals?" She gave me a sidelong look. "Still, you poor child. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I did see in the crystal. Galis, my dear." "What's that?" "You and I," said Cousin Galis. "And for all I know, the doves and the hedgehogs and the tadpoles and your poor lost dog and all will live there together one day." We had reached the door that led through a high wall into the school grounds. With my hand on the knob, I said, without looking at her, "I didn't think such things ever really happened. The happily ever after things, I mean." "They don't," she said gently. "Not forever." Happiness changes as you change. It's in yourself. But I will be there just as long as you need me, which won't be forever, or even perhaps for very long. She reached over my shoulder and pushed the door open. Go along now, and don't forget your things in the summer house. I won't come in. I'm going to Langwathby to get a train. Goodbye. The door shut between us. And that's the end of chapter 4.